And yeah, Usha's more sophisticated in the ways of the world. The only downside I'll say of Usha is I asked the convention planners, I said, what about having my wife introduce me before my speech? I'm not making that mistake ever again.
Ah, J.D. Vance. Yale graduate and venture capital darling. If there's one thing this man has mastered more than playing political twister with his beliefs, it's saying things that make the entire internet collectively gasp and clutch its pearls. And nothing showcased that better than when he looked America dead in the eye, shrugged, and said, "One downside about Usha." Now, before we dive in, let's remember this isn't your run-of-the-mill political gaffe. This isn't forgetting a name on stage or confusing Iraq with Iran. No, this was J.D. Vance looking at his own wife, the mother of his children, the partner of his dreams, and deciding, you know what would go great in this speech about family? A casual roast of my spouse. The kind of phrase that sends relationship therapists sprinting for their whiteboards and your grandmother muttering, "Lord have mercy," while clutching her rosary beads. 95% of you are still not subscribed, so don't forget to hit that button. Now for context, Usha is no random figure. She's a litigator, Ivy League educated, and frankly, way out of J.D. Vance's league, both academically and sartorially. She reads actual books. She probably knows what a Roth IRA is. Meanwhile, J.D. is out here treating hearings like they're auditioning tapes for a reboot of Duck Dynasty. J.D. said that the one downside about Usha is that she always tells him when he's wrong, but at the wrong time. And apparently that's just so inconvenient for J.D. Poor guy. Imagine being corrected when you're spewing nonsense. It's almost like accountability?
Vance grasped his right ring finger with his left hand, searching for a sense of security. Usha saw this and gently took his right hand. Only then did Vance begin speaking confidently. Vance stood properly, but suddenly he faked a cough and lightly nudged Usha with his arm. Usha reacted quickly, grabbing his hand and gently tugging at his sleeve. This clever move made people think she was just adjusting his outfit, but in reality, Vance was very nervous, even whispering to her.
Anyone who has paid attention to J.D. Vance's political career knows it's not Usha who has the downside. It's J.D. who's got the emotional stability of a Roomba stuck in a corner, gently banging into the same wall while blaming the deep state. You see, Usha isn't just a wife. She's become J.D.'s emotional first responder. This woman had to hold her husband's hand in public to calm him down so many times, I'm starting to think she should be issued a lanyard and a Secret Service badge. Not because she's guarding him from threats, but because she's guarding us from him. In another instance, during a private donor dinner, J.D. Vance reportedly launched into a 12-minute rant about how liberal coastal elites want to raise prices on gas stoves. Right as he was building up to a completely unrelated monologue about how the liberals are uneducated, and dumb boom Usha's hand made contact. Suddenly, J.D. blinked, took a sip of water, and started talking about infrastructure like a normal, semi-functioning vice president. Magic? Numbered just the power of a woman desperately trying to keep her husband from trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons.
JD absolutely, at the time and today, would never, ever, ever want to say something to hurt someone who was trying to have a family, who really, was struggling with that. And I also understand there are a lot of other reasons why people may choose not to have families, and many of those reasons are very good. I just wish sometimes that people would talk about those things, and that we would spend a lot less time just sort of going through this three-word phrase or that three-word phrase.
Now, Usha defending J.D. Vance is like watching someone calmly explain to a crowd why their toddler set fire to the kitchen. He meant well, he just really hates blenders. Because when J.D. Vance launched his infamous attack on childless cat ladies, calling them cultural saboteurs and suggesting they shouldn't have political power, the backlash was instant.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made.
Feminists were furious. Child-free women were livid. The ASPCA probably had to issue a statement reminding folks not to throw their cats in protest. But amidst the fury, as the internet gathered its torches and hashtags, there she was again, Usha Chilukuri Vance, the human fire extinguisher, the legal scholar, the woman who looked at that rhetorical dumpster fire and said, "I can work with this." She didn't call it a mistake. She didn't say J.D. Vance had misspoken. No, Usha, ever the tactician. told interviewers that JD's comments were about the shifting values in American society, not an attack on women who enjoy feline companionship and not having their uterus legislated like it's public infrastructure. According to Usha, JD wasn't targeting individuals. He was raising concerns about the erosion of traditional values. Usha didn't just defend Vance. She pulls JD out of the cultural muck he's been rolling in and tries to place him, gently, hesitantly, on the shelf marked serious thinker, even if he keeps knocking over the books labeled logic and self-awareness. But if you thought Usha defending JD's cat lady commentary was the peak of political spouse endurance,
when she made a statement that would ignite a wildfire of discussion on social media. With a solemn expression, she said, "My husband, JD Vance, is very lonely." Lonely? He's Vice President of the United States.
and with that sentence, the whole picture shifts. Because for all the firebrand speeches, the controversial quotes, the chest-thumping declarations about masculinity, family, and the fall of civilization, behind it all is a man who, according to the person who knows him best, is deeply, profoundly alone. It's a startling admission, not because loneliness is shameful, but because it's rare to hear someone admit that about a political figure who's supposed to be strong, grounded, and unshakable. Usha didn't say it to gain sympathy. She said it like someone who spent years watching a man unravel slowly, piece by piece from behind the safety of a podium. You can picture it now. Late nights in their home, JD pacing, agitated, eyes red from doom scrolling through comment sections and Twitter fights, angry at headlines, angry at liberals, angry at how little control he really has over anything. And Usha sitting quietly absorbing it all. Not arguing, not fixing, just trying to be there. But presence doesn't cure isolation. And JD's loneliness isn't the kind that comes from lack of companionship. It's the kind that festers when you spend your life yelling into microphones and not hearing anything back. JD isn't just lonely in the emotional sense. He's lonely in the ideological sense. He's isolated by his own rhetoric. The further he pushes into the culture wars, the more he alienates the very communities that shaped him, and the more he relies on Usha as his anchor. His only safe place in a world of perceived enemies. And that's a heavy burden. When Usha says JD is lonely, she's not just describing a mood, she's describing the foundation of his political personality. That sense of loss, of disconnection, of feeling like the world is against you, that's not part of JD's campaign strategy. That's his core.
And you know, there was so much excitement around Usha's visit to Greenland this Friday that I decided that I didn't want her to have all that fun by herself, and so I'm going to join her. We want to reinvigorate the security of the people of Greenland.
JD must be feeling extra lonely, because this time, JD Vance announced he'd be accompanying Usha to Greenland. Just a sudden declaration, delivered with all the sincerity of a man trying to be less lonely. That is, if Greenland helps. There had been whispers that Usha was participating in an international law symposium, or a climate delegation, or maybe just trying to get a break from Ohio. The specifics didn't matter. What mattered was JD, a man who once gave the idea of seizing Greenland like it was available on Facebook Marketplace, was now planning to go there with his wife, presumably in some sort of self-imposed emotional exile. It was the most JD Vance response imaginable. Your wife hints that you're lonely, exhausted, spiraling from within a political machine that's draining your soul. So your solution? Tag along to Greenland. Because nothing screams healing your marriage like 20 hours of travel to a giant frozen landmass that's known more for its ice caps than emotional warmth. But JD framed it as a bonding trip, a way to reset, to support Usha, to spend time away from the noise, the headlines, the culture war debates. No microphones, no press pool. Just him, Usha, and a parka that probably still had the tags on it. JD Vance isn't just tagging along on a trip. He's trying to reconnect with the only person who's still willing to speak to him with honesty, the only person who doesn't treat him like a symbol, a senator, or a campaign tool. Just JD. Maybe this is the cure. Maybe isolation is what he needed all along. A place where no one knows who he is and no one cares about what he thinks. And Usha, she's finally smiling for real. Not because she has to, but because JD has no Wi-Fi. It's the first time in years she hasn't had to explain, defend, or reframe a single sentence. So if you're ever wondering why JD Vance stopped trending, It's because he's in Greenland, most likely arguing with a puffin. And Usha? She's 20 feet behind him, holding the plane ticket home and thinking, maybe I'll take the long way back. If you enjoyed watching this, you must watch our video on Candace Bergen, absolutely destroying JD Vance.